There we go, we're recording. So Mark, just a massive thanks for being here today. I said to you that I didn't want to do too much of an introduction because the introduction is very much a part of your story. But Mark Colbourne, MBE, former world and Paralympic champion. And mate, I'm going to leave the introduction at that. I'm going to get out of your way and everybody else's way. I'm going to throw the ball over to you. Thank you so much for this. And everybody enjoy. Mark, over to you, mate.
Thank you ever so much, Peter. I'm just going to share my screen, everybody, and share my sound. And we can get this wonderful Friday afternoon session on the roll. Let's have a go here. Make sure everything's out of the way. Fantastic. So who's top of my screen here? David Labouchier. Can you give me a thumbs up, David? David, if you can hear me. Perfect. Excellent. So let me just minimize this and then we can get started. Fantastic. Good stuff. Okay. First and foremost, thank you. First and foremost, thank you to Peter and Devika for inviting me onto this wonderful Friday afternoon session. The session's actually going to be around 60 minutes from myself. And then the last 20 minutes is actually going to be a Q&A session. So if you do have any questions through, please feel free to write them down, or using the wonderful facility of technology, please feel free to pop your questions into the chat box. So Peter or Devika can actually, take those questions. And obviously then if you do need to leave, then your question will stay in the chat box ready, for when we finish at around, around that sort of 5 past 1. I am a stickler for time, hence why I put my stopwatch on. And obviously I'm fully respectful of your time as well as mine. So let's get started. What does the session actually entail today? The session today, we're actually going to cover how to use resilience, which is topic number 1. Number 2, how to achieve peak performance, how to obtain it and maintain it for life. Number 3, know your why. Why do you do what you do? And I'll just leave you with that thought a minute. Number 4, we want to learn how to manage your inner voice, which is something that I've got a big passion for, having worked with Professor Steve Peters at British Cycling. Number 5, how to change your goals into your personal legacy. And this is something, as I said to Peter when we spoke, it's a big thing for me. It's a big, proud moment to be representing the legacy of London 2012. Which brings me on to me, Mark Colbourne, MBE, former world and Paralympic cycling champion. I'm actually an international speaker now, having presented at over 226 events, including this one. So this is number 227. But I'm an international speaker with a difference. How come, you may ask? Because I'm actually a proud Paralympian. Because in reality, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, technically I shouldn't be here. And now you're thinking, what does he really mean by that? So today I'm going to take you through my journey. My journey to live out that childhood dream that was the London 2012 Paralympic Games. Because the bottom line is, I guess I wasn't born a world or Paralympic cycling champion. I was born Margaret's boy. So I had to become that person. To live out that childhood dream, I had to actually reinvent myself, use resilience as my fuel, and then deliver in front of the rest of the world. So let's take a quick insight into the first 6 laps of my 12-lap race at the London 2012 Paralympic Games. So don't panic if the video actually stops halfway through, because that's actually pre-planned. So let's have a look at the first 6 laps and keep your eye on the other rider, because he's pretty quick. He really, really is. Here we go.
No trouble with the gate this time. Mark's away, pushing into this first corner, starting to get over the top of the gear. No problems whatsoever getting away for this time.
12 laps of the track, and as we watch the final get underway, for the record, the bronze has just been won while we were talking by Rodrigo Lopez of Argentina, who has got the bronze. Now let's see who gets the goal here, and watch the lights. That gives you the guidance here as we start. Colbourne is down by 1.1 on the start.
Now we know that Mark has a slow start. That's part of his style, and he'll start to wind it up now, hopefully. Just making sure that Liang Zhu's not going to try and go for the catch. You know, he's quite quick, so he could actually try and chase in, but I don't think there's any trouble with that at the moment. He's holding out on him.
The great danger of having such a wonderful audience is you to react to the audience rather than ride to your schedule or the man on the other side of the track, and you sell out before the last kilometre. Now, this is a good sign, in my opinion, that Mark has got off the mark a little bit slower.
He's been called forward by his coach. Just dragging him a bit forward, just telling him he's a little bit behind schedules and he needs to pick up a little bit.
Still, it's the Chinese rider reaching the opposite side of the track first. It's 1.181 the deficit now as we go through the first kilometre. And the first kilometre time, 1:17.611, and not a particularly fast opening kilometre here.
Yeah, Liang Zhu definitely up on what he was this morning. It'll be quite interesting to see how much quicker he's going to go.
And Colbourne is coming back, and as always, this incredible crowd spots him before I do. He's now inside a second. He's down nearly half a second. The steamroller is in progress.
As you know, Mark's a good time trialist. He's on the road as well, so he'll know what to do here. If anybody can actually lift this second part, Mark can do it.
Here we go. As he closes in now, they're almost locked on opposite sides of the track.
Mark's up.
And
Here we go. Hopefully you've all got goosebumps, exactly the same as me. So that was the first 6 laps of a childhood dream that I waited almost 30 years to actually facilitate. But let me take you back. Let me take you back almost to the very beginning and share with you, obviously, what I achieved. Certainly share with you how I achieved it, because now, even today, sharing this information on behalf of To Be Limitless, you know, now residing in Dubai, in the Middle East. The most important message for me to share with people is why. Why did I give up my corporate job? Why did I give up 3 years of my life, almost 1,000 days of blood, sweat, and lots of tears, to chase that Olympic dream, to chase that title that I always thought was possible, maybe, you know, but I just needed the right opportunity. So let me take you back. Let me take you back to the very, very beginning, when, as I said earlier on, I was born as Margaret's boy, and this is me and my late father. My late father was known as Mr. Nice Guy, because he genuinely was a true gentleman through and through. And I guess as a young child, my dream, you know, my vision was maybe to become, you know, an Olympic champion one day. Why? Because I genuinely loved movement. I loved sport. I loved the feeling of that dopamine that we all get when we move. Unfortunately, in today's sedentary environment, it's a shame that people don't move enough, you know, because that dopamine feeling, you know, is something that we were given by Mother Nature for free. So even as a young child, I wanted to be, believe it or not, the next Daley Thompson. Having watched Daley Thompson in 1980 and 1984 perform in front of the rest of the world, I wanted to become that person. So even though my late father was my hero, my inspiration, my go-to guy, Daley Thompson was definitely, you know, the sporting icon that I wanted to become. So let me just share with you one important key message at this, you know, at this slide. I remember when I think I was about 10, and my late father gave me an insight into the process of life that, you know, we're born, we live, and we pass on. And that's reality, he said. But what he did share with me was the importance of gaining experiences, feelings, friendships, decisions, because that's what we take with you to the grave. Okay, that's what we take with us. Everything else, the car, the house, the watch, the shoes, you know, the materialistic things, when we do pass on, we hand them all back. So technically, we only borrow those things. But my dad and my late mum both knew that I was really passionate about health and well-being and movement. And I think, yeah, certainly when I was a young child, they probably thought there was something wrong with me because I would just never sit still, you know. So let's cover the 5 key topics, you know, from today's session. So the first session is how to use resilience. So when I got married at 21, and then I started to work, you know, in Cardiff in South Wales, where I'm actually, you know, born and bred and from. And my ex-wife and I, we parted company when I was 35, nearly 36. And what that allowed me to do as a human being was to follow, the feelings of racing triathlon, of paragliding and rock climbing. So when I actually qualified as a paragliding pilot, and if you look closely at this picture, and this picture was taken on the 2nd of May 2009, and it was a bank holiday weekend in South Wales in the UK. And if you look closely in the center of this picture, underneath the blue canopy, that was me. Qualified paragliding pilot, just enjoying the wonderful weekend weather, the blue skies, as you can see, 20-degree temperature, and it was just perfect, However, around 6 hours after this picture was taken, I was flying across the top ridge to the right-hand side, just probably where Simon is, my friend underneath the red and white canopy. And I flew into what is known as a crosswind. Now, you can't see it, you can't feel it, you can't touch it, but it's there. And as I flew into it, my full 25 foot of nylon, the canopy, just collapsed. Just a freak of nature. So from 15 meters or 40 feet, I fell, and it took me around 2 seconds before I actually hit the floor. Thankfully, I'd hit the grass, not the rocks, because I guess if I'd hit the rocks, then I probably wouldn't be sharing these key messages with you today. Now, to add insult to injury, I got dragged for probably 100 meters by the canopy and not realizing exactly what had actually happened until the gentleman that you see in the bottom left-hand corner underneath the red canopy came to my rescue. And this gentleman's name is Sergeant Dennis Lewis, and he's an ex-SAS paratroop instructor from the UK, from the Special Forces. And he arrived at my side, and I'm just totally, in shock. I can't move. I'm paralyzed from the waist down. And Dennis says to me, "Oh my gosh, are you still alive?" I said, "Dennis, I can't feel my legs." So immediately he radioed for the Wales Air Ambulance, who thankfully arrived in about 10 or 11 minutes. So they stabilized me with a neck collar and a chest brace, inserted the morphine into my veins. And then I got airlifted off to hospital. And I'll never forget, having had the x-rays and the MRI scans that evening, to be told that night at the age of 40 that unfortunately I'd broken my back. So the picture you see before you is not my x-ray, because I think, the NHS probably in the UK would not be very happy with me sharing my x-rays across the world. But I wanted this to be such an impact, view on what can happen to our incredible body. Because we all think we're invincible. We all think that, we're totally invincible. Unfortunately, we're very fragile. So to be told that night that I'd broken my back, I genuinely thought it was the end of my life, as you can imagine. And waking up the next morning and just in floods of tears thinking, this is probably the end, and sharing my thoughts and feelings with my parents. And I'll never forget, my dad, God love him, leaning over and putting his hand on my shoulder and saying to me, "I told you. I told you to be careful, didn't I, Mr. Action Man?" And I just said, "Look, Dad, now is not the time. I've just broken my back. My legs don't work. I'm just going into this horrendous, unprecedented shock, And this is how I felt. Because when we go through change as human beings, this is how we all feel when we go through the Kubler-Ross change curve. Shock, anger, almost denial in some circumstances. So it was at this point that I had to, having no choice, I had to start to think logically, not emotionally. Because I'll never forget having the conversation with the consultant after having my spinal operation, 6 pins inserted into my spine, having broken T12. I had a huge thoracic fracture when I hit the floor. So I was told that my feet would never work ever again, having, this disability that they call drop foot. So I have lower leg paralysis that I'm left with for life. So I've got no feet working, no calf muscles, no hamstrings, no glutes firing. So all of the muscles in the backs of my legs don't work. However, thankfully, and I mean this, I'm so grateful that the fronts of my legs, as in my quads and my hip flexors, are actually still working. So what they did after 6 months in hospital, when they finally hoisted me out of bed and they placed me into the gymnasium and they sat me on one of the watt bikes, and they bandaged my feet to the pedals because they knew my feet didn't work. This was logical thinking, not emotional thinking. So when you think that you don't have any options to move forward, trust me, there's always an option. It may not be a fantastic option, but it's better than where you were, you know? So having left hospital after 6 months, the first thing I did was to go back to the gym on my crutches and start to get myself fit and strong once again. And 6 months after leaving hospital, I started cycling with a disability. And I received a phone call one day from the paramedic who treated me to invite me along to a charity cycling event around Wales, raising money for the Wales Air Ambulance. And immediately I said, I'm in. I'm in. Because, you know, this organization saved my life, and Ross Griffin, the paramedic, certainly did. So that week, cycling around Wales, incredible experience, meeting some incredibly famous, you know, sports people. The gentleman in the middle, Darren Campbell, Olympic sprinter from GB. You've got Colin Jarvis, you know, ex-Welsh and British Lions captain. And I'm just in awe of these people. So I'll never forget, you know, riding around Wales and meeting a gentleman who I'd never met before. And he said to me, can I ask you a question? I said, yes, of course. He said, what's wrong with your legs? So I shared my story. I broke my back. I've got lower leg paralysis, but thankfully I can actually cycle, albeit with a disability. And he said these words to me that changed the course of my life forever. He said, can I ask you one last question? I said, yeah, of course. He said, are you training for the London 2012 Paralympic Games? Because this was June 2010. I said, the Paralympics? No. Why the hell would I do that? He said, honestly, young man, I think you should. And that was it. That was the light bulb moment that literally went off in my head. The hairs stood up on my neck. I had goosebumps. And I said to this gentleman, thank you. Thank you for planting that seed. Because even though I just thought the road ahead was tainted, you know, I really did. So I went home that week, told my parents I was not going to go back to work. I gave up my corporate job and I started training full-time for the Paralympics to make it into British cycling. And both my parents probably thought I was crazy. Even my late dad said, Mark, just go back to work. Come on, you know. But what I started to do, and this is the important factor for, you know, the key message number one, how to use resilience, is thinking logically. I knew my disability was never going to improve. If it did, great. If it didn't, I'm happy. Let's crack on. So by thinking logically of how to prepare, how to get myself fit, strong, active, healthy once again. So I'll never forget seeing this statement and explaining to my late father that I had to do this because London 2012, remember, was only going to happen once. Okay. And it was going to happen with or without me. And I had to do everything in my power to be there. And as Michael Jordan once said, I can accept failure. Everyone fails at something. But what I cannot accept is not trying. I had to do this. And my father said, oh, you do whatever you want. You know, good luck. I said, okay, thank you. And I gave him a hug and I said, look, I love you unconditionally, and I'm going to do this with or without you. So before I knew it, believe it or not, I'd actually met an incredible coach in South Wales who actually helped me to make it into the British cycling team, into the paracycling team to train full-time, based in Manchester, ready for the London 2012 Paralympic Games. And this in itself was almost, I guess, the first start of this childhood dream, to prove to myself that I was definitely worthy of wearing that fleece, worthy of wearing that jersey, worthy of representing my country. So how do we, point number two, how do we achieve peak performance? The one thing I learned at British cycling, I had to give up alcohol. I had to give up chocolate. I had to be told what to eat, when to sleep, how much fluid to drink. Why? Because this is part of the process as a controlled environment to get you to peak performance and then maintain you. So my question to you is this: what's missing in your life so you can achieve peak performance? You can obtain it and maintain it. So when I joined British Cycling, I was told, even though we were 12 months from the Paralympic Games, I had some monthly training to do with the difference. And I'll never forget speaking to my coach, Tom Stanton, and saying to Tom, so what's this monthly training with the difference? He said, Mark, look, at the moment, you're doing around 60 miles a day, but we need you to do much, much more because the clock is ticking for London. I said, okay, how much more do I need to do? And he said around 165 kilometers a day, which is about 100 miles. I said, sorry, because in my head, I couldn't comprehend, I couldn't comprehend doing 100 miles a day, but the split sessions, 50 miles in the morning, you come back, you have food, you have a shower, you have sleep, and then 50 miles again in the afternoon. So let me share with you what, that 500 miles a week or, 2,000 miles a month actually really looks like. It's Cardiff to Moscow. I love Google, it's great. Okay, this gives you a great representation of just how far we train, as pro athletes, okay? So for me, this was, I guess, the process, that was going to get me, to London 2012. But before London 2012, I had to win a medal in the World Track Championships in Los Angeles, which was February 2012, 7 months before the Paralympics. And I'll never forget receiving that email, which was actually in the November, to say that I'd been selected, for the World Track Championships. Why do I remember that? Because it was the same week that my mum called me to say that, unfortunately, my father had been, rushed into hospital and he'd been diagnosed with stomach cancer and probably given around 3 to 6 months to live. And I just kept thinking to myself, not now, please, not now. So let's move on to, topic number 3, key message number 3, knowing your why to win big. So when I was selected for the World Track Championships, we prepared as best as we could on the track in Manchester, training full time under the lottery funding. And I'll never forget going to see my dad on the Friday before we flew to Los Angeles. And my dad was in end of life care, being cared for by the local hospice, and just seeing this wonderful, wonderful human being almost waste away in front of my eyes was heartbreaking. But I'll never forget saying to my dad before I left, can you just do me one thing before I go? And he said, yeah, of course. I said, just be here in 10 days' time when I get home, because I'm bringing that world track championship medal, that medal back for you. And he said, okay, I'll do my best, Mark, because as you know, I can only do my best. I said, thank you. I gave him a hug and a kiss, left, drove back to Manchester, and we flew out to Los Angeles the next day. So we arrived in Los Angeles and we had around, 5 days of preparation before the finals. And I'll never forget waking up. It was a Thursday morning, the 9th of February, 2012, to literally 6 missed calls from my mum's mobile. And I guess I just knew in my heart that something was wrong, So I rang my mum, and as you can imagine, she gave me that horrible news to say that Mr. Nice Guy, my wonderful hero, had actually passed away that morning in his sleep peacefully, which was a blessing. It really, really was a blessing. So the armband that you see on my left arm, I was given permission by the UCI, the World Cycling Federation, to actually wear that armband, in respect of my late father. So I shared with my coach exactly what had happened. My dad has now passed away. And immediately he said these words to me, let me go and ring Steve. I said, sorry. He said, let me ring Steve. I said, who the hell is Steve? He said, let me ring Professor Steve Peters back in Manchester, who is the #1 sports psychologist and psychiatrist in sport. And Steve came on the phone, and his first words were, please accept my sincere condolences, for the loss of your dad. Please take a seat. And I said to him, okay. He said, Mark, I'm going to ask you 3 questions, and I need an answer, because we need to know, are we going to fly you home to be with your mum, to be with your family, or are you going to stay and race, or maybe even stay and not race? Because that's okay if that's what you want to do. I said, okay, sir. I'm sat down. And he said these words to me, and please write down your feelings. Imagine this conversation was you and Professor Peters, not me and Dr. Peters. He said, Mark, we need to know, are you going to fly home today? Which is okay. We'll do that for you. But remember, your dad's not coming back. Secondly, you stay, but you don't race, but your dad's not coming back. Or thirdly, you stay and you race, but your dad's not coming back. Do you understand? I said, yes, I do understand. He said, I'll give you a minute, have a think about it, and I'll wait. And I just thought to myself, I've waited probably 30 years to have an opportunity to race in the World Championships, to possibly become a world champion. I said, I'm going to stay. I'm going to race tomorrow for my country, but most importantly, I'm going to race for my dad. And he said to me, okay, good luck. And he put the phone down. And I was like, hello? Hello? I said to my coach, he's gone. Because there's no more to say, is there? You know, reality is reality. So the next day, I kept thinking, how am I going to get over this? How am I going to win this race? Because in our heads, believe it or not, there's two of us. You have the human that thinks with facts and logic. Okay. We also have, the automatic computer that is programmed to act, through repetitive actions. But we also have this little fella, which Professor Steve Peters calls the chimp, who lives its life with feelings and emotions. But remember, I'm racing in the World Track Championships. There was no time to be thinking of emotions. Because even though there is a time for emotion, of course there is. I'm human. I'm actually a very sensitive human. And there is a time for emotion. I agree. But today, it was all about logical thinking. It was all about going through the process of having breakfast at the right time, warming up at the right time, hydrating at the right time, stretching at the right time, to get ready for one of the most important races in my life. And I kept thinking to myself, I'm doing this for my dad. I'm doing this for my hero. So my question to you is this: who's your hero? Okay, who's your hero? Who's your go-to person? Who's your go-to guy or go-to lady? Who do you do what you do? Who do you do it for? Because to do anything for ourselves is easy, but to do it for other people, there's definitely much more value. So going into the finals, I had this experience of this other voice almost trying to talk me out of it. Okay, so let me introduce you to my chimp. His name is Dave. I know there's a couple of Daves on the call, so apologies right now, okay? But this is my inner chimp. He's a cheeky little chappy, okay? He really is. And he tried his best to talk me out of that race. He tried his absolute utmost to put me off. But I kept thinking, I've got to do this. I've got to do this. So the very next day, I remember thinking to myself, I'm not the brightest human in the world. I don't have degrees and PhDs and, incredible qualifications that even some of my close friends have. And I commend them for that. But what I do have, is the ability to change. And thanks to Charles Darwin, this is a great quote. So please take a screenshot. Feel free to write it down, because in my opinion, this is so powerful. So the next day we prepped, we got ready, and then it was into the warrior mode. And this is an inner feeling, that I feel, when I'm training and when I'm racing, and now I'm retired, living my life, to ensure that I can actually manage that inner voice. So think about key message number 4. How do we manage that inner voice? Well, believe it or not, Professor Steve Peters says we have to feed the chimp facts, not bananas. Okay, feed the chimp facts, not bananas. Because when we feed the chimp facts, it stays calm. It's called boxing the chimp or caging the chimp. because it's so easy to have this incredible brain that we have, almost allow it to be in conflict with emotions and feelings. Whereas as human beings, we have to take control. We have to think logically, because it's logical thinking that wins the medals. And the picture you see before me is actually of me crossing and passing the actual athlete, the rider that I raced against in the final of the World Championships. The actual moment, that incredible moment that I became a world champion in the sport of cycling. So to stand on that podium and be very proud of wearing what they call the rainbow jersey. Now, the rainbow jersey you see in front of you is synonymous with the world champions in cycling. So people like Sir Chris Hoy, Mark Cavendish, Vicky Pendleton, and now Mark Colbourne is part of that rainbow jersey club. And it was an incredible moment for me to bring that, bring that world championship medal back, and bring that jersey back. But unfortunately, to attend my dad's funeral, that week was, it was just heartbreaking. It really, really was. But as we all know, life must go on, must go on. And yes, I grieved. And I suppose even now, we're sort of almost 11 years on, I'm still grieving because I guess, I miss my best friend, is the bottom line. So I wanted to share this with you. This is something that I suppose I came across in neuroscience a few years ago, obviously studying as a speaker, as a facilitator, as a leadership coach, is the habits, maybe, as human beings. And I love this. I love this quote, of how you do anything is how you do everything. So just think about this for one moment. Think about the words of Aristotle, okay? We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, therefore, is not an act, but a habit. And the more habits we create, positive habits, good habits, healthy habits, the more habits we create on a daily basis, it's easier. It's easier then to achieve what you really want to achieve. It really, really is. So I'll never forget when all the training was done, when all the training was done for London 2012. And I'll never forget actually, being selected, which was about 2 months before the Paralympics. So maybe a show of hands with everybody on the call, who remembers the Olympics, the London 2012 Olympics. Hands up, please. Thank you. Would you all agree it was a great warm-up for the Paralympics? When the superheroes came to town, and we knew going into London that the whole world was watching. But the one thing that I love sharing now is the importance of knowing that London 2012 was only going to happen once. Remember 2 years previous when I had that vision, when I had that feeling and I made that decision and had the integrity to stick to it, to see it through. Because it's the old saying, and I love this saying, is it easy to get to the top? Hell no. Is it possible? Absolutely. So now it was time to focus on the process, not the outcome, because the outcome would take care of itself. So that daily, just precision of training, eating, sleeping, going into the games, knowing I had, completed all the training that my coach had asked me to do. I certainly had the faith, the self-belief and trust in all of the coaches that I worked with, the biomechanics, the strength coaches, the nutritionists, all of these incredible elite individuals, which is why we need coaches in our lives. I say this openly on stage now. There's almost no sport in team or individual that's never achieved, the pinnacle in their sport without a coach, without a coach. So it's so important. Okay. So going into the Paralympics, having been selected, I'll never forget, as you see, this picture was taken actually on the balcony in the apartment of the Paralympic Village in London. However, going into the Paralympics, as a human being, I had this in the back of my mind. Okay. I had this in the back of my mind. What if, okay? What if I don't achieve anything? You know, what if I fall off in front of the rest of the world? What if I have an injury? And it's that inner voice again, it's the chimp that keeps thinking emotionally to almost keep us safe, because that's what it was designed to do. Okay, so going into the Paralympics, I had a meeting with Professor Peters, and I said to him, I have some concerns. And he said, okay, Mark, please tell me. I said, well, I have these sort of four inner feelings going on. And he said, okay, explain, fire away. I said, I feel apprehension. Okay, I feel apprehension going into the Paralympics because I'd never been to a Paralympics before, you know, but going in as a world champion, I felt very proud, but apprehensive, you know. And he said, okay, that's normal. Okay, as a human being, that's normal. I said, okay. He said, what's your second? I said, well, fear. The fear of going into that cauldron, that coliseum of racing in the Velodrome, you know, in front of 7,000 people. He said, well, that's just your brain keeping you safe. Because those feelings we get at a cellular level, that's normal, okay? That's why we get sweaty palms and palpitations and a sweaty brow. It's our body and our brain getting ready for change, okay? Preparing for change. He said, what's number 3? I said, doubt. What if I don't win, you know? What if I don't win? And he said, Mark, that's not you speaking. That's not you speaking. That's your inner chimp. That's Dave. I said, okay, maybe so, because as a human being, I knew that I had to, whatever the outcome was going to be, I had to accept it. He said, okay, what's your last? I said, just uncertainty, you know, just the uncertainty of what's going to happen tomorrow. And even though we'd been through in training thousands and thousands of hours, you know, a visualization and, you know, prepping for the heart rate and the VO2 max and the lactic acid and all these feelings you get as a human being when you compete on a world stage. He said, okay, think about this. Let me ask you a question. I said, okay. He said, when you go into these races, are you going to give the effort 99% and keep your fingers crossed that you're going to win or achieve something? Or are you going to give it 100% and accept the outcome? And I thought, yeah, he's got a point here, isn't he? Because there's no way I'm going to go to a one-off Olympic Games and try and wing it. Okay, and try and wing it. And I said, well, I'm going to give these races 100%. I'm going to leave everything on the track. He said, okay, fantastic. Well done. I'm proud of you because we've trained you well. And what you have to accept in terms of the outcome is what you live with for the rest of your life. However, if you know in your heart that you've given 100% in that process, training, diet, lifestyle, you know, sleep, he said, you have to then be proud of whatever you achieve, whether you win gold or whether you finish last. So think about this in your life right now. What's missing? Okay, what's missing in your life? Do you have to give up something to achieve something that you can be proud of for the rest of your life? I was happy to give up chocolate and alcohol for 3 years. Okay, I really was, even though I don't drink alcohol anymore, but I was happy to give it up to achieve something great, to be in the best condition, mentally, physically, even spiritually going into the Paralympics, to ensure that I could achieve that peak performance state. So just think about this. Going into the Paralympic Games, if this was you, yes, you, if this was you going into the Paralympics, could you give it 100% and be happy with whatever the outcome shows? Because in life, we always want to turn the clock back, don't we? You know, we really do. But going into the games with apprehension, fear, doubt, and uncertainty, in my heart, I knew that I was just going to give this everything and accept the outcome, because we can't change the past. We can learn from the past, but we can only plan for the future. So now you're thinking, what happened next? So going into the Paralympics as the world champion, as I said, having lost my hero, my go-to guy, Having lost Mr. Nice Guy 7 months previous, it broke my heart. It really did as a human being. But I knew this was a chance of a lifetime. This was a chance to create a legacy for myself from that wonderful summer of sport, you know, that was the London 2012 Olympic and Paralympic Games. So just think about this. Imagine training for that 2.5-year period and knowing that you only have 4 minutes to prove to yourself, your coaches, your family, and probably the rest of the world that you were worthy of being there. So my event, which is 12 laps of the Velodrome, or 3 kilometers in the individual pursuit. That morning, as the world champion in that event, I had the luxury of riding last. What does that mean? What that means is that my coach and I watched all the other riders put down their times through the qualification rides. And there were some fast times. There were some really fast times, actually. But the last rider to ride was a gentleman from China called Yang Zi, who was 24. So he was 18 years younger than me. Okay. Now remember, I was 42 at the time. And I'll never forget when he put down his time in the 3-kilometer individual pursuit, he broke the world record. He broke the world record in my event. How rude. And I'll never forget my coach turning to me and raising his eyebrows as if to say, this kid's pretty quick. He said, Mark, do you realize you have to go under world record pace? You have to beat the world record just to get into the final. I said, Tom, let's do it. Leave this to me. So we set the schedule, okay, to ensure that I could just go under that 4-minute world record. So I'll never forget stepping up onto the Velodrome and stepping onto the bike, clipping in my cycling shoes, and obviously listening to my coach, you know, because he has total trust in me and I have total trust in him. Because in any coaching environment, you have to have total trust. You have to have collaboration. You have to have that private, confidential trust in each other. And I'll never forget Tom saying to me, look, you have to hold something back because in 4 hours' time, you have to repeat the process in the final. And I'll never forget looking at Tom. And Tom said to me, Mark, please hold something back. I said, Tom, I'm going to smash this out to the park. I'm going to smash this out to the Velodrome because when I race in the final against that Chinese lad, he's going to think, oh my gosh, how can I go even quicker than what I did in the qualification ride? So in my qualification ride, the gun went off. I completed 12 laps and I broke the world record by 7 seconds. I absolutely smashed it out to the Velodrome. And I'll never forget coming off the track and my coach gave me a big hug and he whispered in my ear, how did that feel? And I looked him in the eyes and I said, honestly, it was easy. It was easy because I was in such good condition that I could repeat the process again another 4 hours later. Because that's all about focusing on the process, not the outcome. That's all about thinking logically, not emotionally. So I'll never forget that afternoon after having my warm down and my food and my sleep and obviously some stretching and hydration. And they called my name that afternoon to enter the center of the Velodrome, to come back into the Velodrome for the final. And my mum was there, you know, my daughter was there, but unfortunately, you know, Mr. Nice Guy wasn't there. He wasn't there to see me literally rewrite the history books, go from breaking my back to breaking world records. And I say that not to impress you, but to impress on you that you can achieve incredible things in your life, but you have to give up some stuff, if that makes sense. You have to give up some stuff to achieve what you want to achieve. So how did I change my ultimate goal into a personal legacy? So my first question to you is this. Who wants to see what happens next? Who wants to see what happens in the last 6 laps? Because in the first 6 laps, as you saw earlier on, you know, Yang Zi was probably 1.5 seconds ahead of me. However, we had a plan. Okay, we had a plan. And I'll never forget when we set down the schedule, which is 19 seconds per lap on that velodrome. In other words, around 202 beats per minute and probably around 50 kilometers an hour to get up to speed and literally hold it and hold it and hold it. And don't get me wrong, it bloody hurt. It really did hurt. But if world records didn't hurt, then everybody would have one, wouldn't they? You know? And I guess for me, after lap 6, that's when the race really started. You know, that's when it really started, because I knew that even though change always happens, and change will always happen, you know, ever since the asteroid hit the Earth 65 million years ago, change will always happen. But I had to stay in control. So who wants to see what happens next? Come on, hands up. Hands up, everybody. Fantastic. So let's watch the last 6 laps of my Paralympic gold medal final race from the London 2012 Paralympic Games. Keep your eye on Yangtze because he's pretty quick.
And now Mark has reversed it by 0.2 seconds. The stadium roof has just gone up 20 feet as he now goes down the back straight, and he's now work in progress. He's nudging it out to nearly a second.
Well, I can see it on me, Mark. It's a great pursuit. He'll know what he's going to do here. He shouldn't tire. I think the Chinese rider tried to go very, very fast on him, setting a much faster time he did. It's like a second half up in the first kilometre. But Mark knows what he's going to do. It won't be long, I think, before he'll actually have the Chinese rider in his sights.
Don't let's get overconfident now, Neil, as he comes round into the 2-kilometre point here. This is at the 2/3 distance now, and the crowd in front of me, as always, block my view as they all stand up. 2:35 for the second kilometre, and 3 seconds. I take it all back, Neil. He's got the rider in his sights.
Yeah, I know Mark's going to do it. I know he can haul him in. He'll haul him in around about a second and a half a lap now. We really sort of pull up on him.
There he comes off that banking with a beautiful streamlined top pursuing position here. Mark Colbourne, 42 years of age.
This could be the first gold medal for the Welshman. Bit of a surprise, yes, for him in the kilo, but he knows this is the one he wants. This is the one he came for.
Mark Colbourne, who broke his back in a paragliding fall when his ring collapsed and he fell 40 feet. That was in May 2009. In August 2012, he is about to become a Paralympic gold medalist. Look at him fly. It might not even reach it. Yes, it will, just about. He won't catch him in 3 kilometres. The bell has gone for the last lap.
Yeah, the coach has given up on telling what schedule he's on. He's just pointing at the Chinese rider. Go and catch him.
He's closing in rapidly, and he might just get on his slipstream as he comes off this banking into the finishing straight. He's 100 metres behind him as he lines up for the finish. The world record has just gone by, but he doesn't care. Oh my God, it hasn't! It hasn't! It's won! I'll have to work it out. It's about 11 hundredths of a second. He's got the world record again.
Incredible. What a way to win a gold medal. Beating your own world record.
You can't go better than that. 2 world records and a gold medal from 2 performances today. Mark Colbourne has got his gold in the best possible style.
Amazing. I still get goosebumps today. I really do. And when those beeps go off, my legs start to move, honestly. So it just comes to show, doesn't it, that even on lap 9, when I came around the corner, I saw the other rider. You know, I knew I'd won. I just had to stay upright. I had to think logically, not emotionally. Because at that point, if I started thinking, oh my gosh, I've won, okay, I could have fell off. Okay, I could have literally rode into the barrier. So it just comes to show that if you continue to give 100%, which is what I did, all the way until the finish line, to then break my own world record by 0.11 of a second, which was incredible. You know, it really, really was. And I guess it was thanks, you know, to this incredible guy that I'm giving a big hug to, who was my coach, you know, Tom Stanton. And the medal that you see before you, you know, today, I guess as a very proud, you know, Paralympic champion, you know, double world record holder, world champion, you know, I just feel so privileged that, you know, I was part of that team that won this medal. You know, Tom was part of that team. You know, the physiologists, the biomechanics, you know, the nutritionists, all of those people that helped me to get to that peak performance state. you know. It was just an incredible feeling. It really was. So to bring that Paralympic gold medal back home, you know, to my family, to my, you know, to my mum and my daughter, and I just wish my dad had been there, you know, but I guess that's life, isn't it, you know. But the one thing that I'm very proud of, and so was my late mum, was my very own goalpost box in my hometown of Tredegar in South Wales. You know, obviously the Royal Mail celebrating our success, you know, which was wonderful. And the other thing that I'm very proud of, you know, is to be a member of the British Empire, you know, to have Prince Charles, now King Charles, award me, you know, that very special honor, that very special award, you know, for my, I guess, my commitment to my country, my services to sport, you know. It was just an incredible moment. So when I retired in 2014, you know, I wanted to give back. You know, I wanted to give back to this incredible sport that had given me a new life, you know, and almost saved my life. You know, it's just an incredible feeling to give back and help other people. You know, it really is. So this is the last slide on this incredible afternoon, you know, this wonderful presentation. Hopefully you've got lots out of it. It's not finished yet. I have a poem to share with you, but this is one of my key messages that I share with audiences now all around the world, you know, because I speak to children, universities, colleges, companies, you know, FTSE 250 companies, because they all want to know, as I said at the very, very beginning, they understand what I've done and how I did it, but they want to know why. You know, they want to know why, because on our journey through life, you know, it's the legacy we leave behind is what people will talk about us when we are gone. And I wanted to create the most powerful legacy I could to now help 1 million people to look good, feel great, and be happy. Because technically we were born happy. We choose to be unhappy. Okay? We choose to be unhappy because happiness is a state of mind. Okay? What goes on around you, the extrinsic pressures, you know, sometimes we can't change, but if we think logically, not emotionally, then, you know, we can stay in a good place. So just to wrap up, in my opinion, everything that I've gone through, I still have a smile on my face. I was going to say a skip in my step, but I can't run anymore because of my disability. I can't skip anymore. I can't rock climb anymore. But yeah, I definitely feel like I've got a skip in my step, you know. So what I'd like to share with you, just to finish today, and hopefully you've got lots out of it. Hopefully you've got all your questions ready. You know, we've probably got about 2 or 3 minutes left. Is just a poem that was given to me by a very special man. I'm trying to think. It was towards the end of 2014 into 2015. And I was mentored by an incredible individual called Chris Akabusi, MBE. And Chris shared this poem with me, and it's called The Man in the Glass. And the actual author is a gentleman called Peter Dale Wimbrow. And The Man in the Glass talks about being honest, you know, with ourselves, because, you know, think about this. We can try and lie to our friends and our family. You can even try and lie to your dog if you want for self-gain, but you should never try and lie to yourself, you know, because those feelings, that's what we take with us, those thoughts and those experiences. So I just want to finish with a poem that's very, yeah, I guess very close, you know, to my heart. So The Man in the Glass, okay, goes like this. When you get what you want in your struggle for self, and the world makes you king for the day, just go to the mirror and look at yourself and see what the man has to say. For it isn't your father or mother or wife whose judgment upon you must pass. The fellow whose verdict counts most in your life is the one staring back from the glass. He's the fellow to please, never mind all the rest, for he's with you, clear to the end. And you've passed your most difficult, dangerous test if the man in the glass is your friend. You may fool the whole world down those pathways of yours and get those pats on the back as you pass. But your final reward will be heartache and tears if you've cheated the man in the glass. So just to finish, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of To Be Limitless and Mark Colbourne, MBE, thank you. Thank you for being patient. Thank you for being a wonderful audience. Hopefully you've got lots out of it and you've got your questions ready, you know, because I'm sure that Peter and Davika would love, as the same as me, to have lots of questions so we can actually help you on your journey. And if you'd like to get in touch, please feel free to visit markcolbourne.com, and obviously we can get in touch with any inquiries we can. So I'm just going to unshare my screen, and hopefully we'll have Peter or Davika actually waiting for us. Let's have a look. There we go. Good stuff. Thank you ever so much.
Thank you so much, mate. Amazing. Absolutely amazing. Yeah, and Mark, please put your website into the chat group.
Sure.
This is actually what Mark does professionally for a living. So if your organizations are interested in having Mark come into the business and present and speak, you know where to find him. His website will be in the chat group. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mark. There was a couple of questions that have been jumping in, so I'm really keen to just throw them at you if that's okay. Rachel, I might just Rachel, are you still there?
I am still
Rachel,
here.
Yeah, can I ask you to just ask your question? Thanks.
Yes, so I didn't realise, Mark, I am also from Wales, Barry, and a paragliding pilot for 25 years as well. So from Rossili to you, and I'm probably there but for the grace of God go I on a couple of those crosswind days. I've stopped now, and we're planning to sail around the world instead. That's my next challenge. However, and I understand, you know, you go to a certain point and then you have to change because something as catastrophic as your accident happens. The challenge is even harder, isn't it? When you set yourself a goal and you achieve it, and then what happens next? So that whole long-term legacy, that long-term why of keeping your warrior spirit once you've succeeded.
Yes, very true. I think for me, it was just changing my approach, changing my approach, and I guess being realistic, when I retired in 2014, I was sort of 44, 45, and just thought, well, yes, I could have continued on to Rio, but, I was a realist, and I just thought, well, I've achieved my goal, which was gold at London, world champion, world record holder, MBE. Maybe I should just accept what I've achieved and say thank you and be grateful, and then move on, and the new challenge then for me, as I said, was helping other people to achieve what they want to achieve. Certainly as a coach, was knowing that everything that I'd achieved could help other people. I'm not saying you have to go out and ride the bike hundreds of miles a week, but even now living in Dubai as a resident, I'm here helping people to obtain and maintain their health using cycling as the low impact vehicle, as the low impact exercise. So I feel, at the age of now 53, I'm just getting started, So yeah, but I think for many people who unfortunately don't achieve their dream, is that because they're doing something wrong, or just because they're not having the correct coaching?
Yeah, no, it's a good point. Thank you.
Nice to meet you.
Mark, I'll jump in with a question. And when you and I spoke, I remember you telling me this, the British cycling team was very famous for their attitude towards tiny little 1% gains everywhere. Mm-hmm. And you gave some really fantastic examples. Could you maybe share a couple of those, those little tiny things that the team was doing that were adding up to make a difference? There was some great golden nuggets. Yeah,
very much so. There's an old saying in British cycling, it's all the small differences. Okay, I've just put my glasses on. I can see you all again now. It's the small differences that add up to make all the difference. Okay, so think about this. You train for 4 years. You train for an Olympics or Paralympics, and the human, the human is at its absolute, pinnacle of fitness. It's the right weight, male or female. You've done all the training, you've done all the diet, the lifestyle, all the preparation is done. Where can the improvements be made? Okay, where can the improvements be made? And obviously back to 2006, 2007, before the Beijing Olympics, they found that the improvements could be made through the bike. The improvements could be made through the tires, through the chain, through the pedals, through the helmet, even through the Lycra skin suit. So when you add up all those 1%, a helmet that was 1% faster, a skin suit that was 6% faster, okay, a bike that was 9% faster. So when you add up all those incremental improvements, that's where British Cycling, as an organization, has led the world for a long, long time, and David Lebouchier knows this, food timing as an athlete is critical. You have to eat it, have to allow the food to digest. You have to allow for the body to absorb all the vitamins, the minerals, the phytonutrients, macronutrients that most people just think, oh, well, I'll eat a bucket load of pasta 2 hours before I go for a run. It's all about education and being coachable, and that's what I've done. I've carried that on into my life now, because I know it works, but yeah, great question, Peter, actually.
Yeah. Has anybody else got anything they want to throw at Mark?
Not throw at me, because I can't run out the way. But yeah, come on, we're bound to have a question. There is no such thing as a daft question, because if it changes your life, then that's a movement,
There's probably a few men in the room, maybe there's a few women in the room as well, that are interested to know how you get your quadriceps so well defined. Because in that picture of your legs that you put out there, I remember thinking, I quite like a pair of thighs that look like that.
Yes. My coach used to call me Red Rum, which is quite funny actually, because he said I had legs like Red Rum. Some people on the call probably don't even know who Red Rum was, Yeah, it's down to two things, I suppose, because the quads and the hip flexors are the only muscles in my legs that work. Then we almost overdevelop them, through, leg pressing, weight training, lots of stretching, lots of flexibility, and, 500 miles a week, at all different kinds of levels of cycling, some intense workouts, some really long 6-hour bike rides, to improve the slow twitch muscles. And I guess, yeah, thinking about it, Peter, probably the best part of 25 years of sport, and health and well-being actually not only saved my life that afternoon, but helped me to develop those muscles even stronger, but yeah, it's down to obviously the positioning, the biomechanics of being on the bike in the right position to deliver all the power with the muscles that do work, Yeah. So yeah.
Thank you. Sandy, over to you.
Hi, Mark. Thank you. Incredible presentation. I know that the why helps us to come back on track, right? And it helps us to stay motivated. But when we get into those times of kind of acute discomfort, the real acute frustration where you just want to throw in the towel, sometimes the why doesn't necessarily get you over that hump in the short term. Maybe it does for you. I see so many people who it doesn't. What are some tools, or what would you recommend to people in terms of getting through that really acute pain point?
Yeah, I think, my experience working with Professor Steve Peters for 3 years is to go and read The Chimp Paradox, go and listen to the audio. I'm not a big fan of reading, if I'm honest. Okay, I'll share this with you, even though the call's recorded. I'm not a big fan of reading, but I've listened to the audio book probably about 12 times.
Okay.
Because, it's just, even working for 3 years with Steve, as I said, I just get so much out of the book now because my stages of my life have changed.
Yeah.
And there's certainly tools and techniques that I take out of the audio or the audible that I can now use, in my life. And the one thing that, and I'll share this with you, this is a great piece of education really from Professor Peters, that when something happens in your life, ask yourself the question, do I really want this to happen? Okay. And if the answer is yes, you're in control. If the answer is no, your chimp's in control. Okay. So my point is that as human beings, we have to take control, and we think and act logically. Even if the whole world around you is falling to pieces, you have to think logically, how can I improve my situation, or how can I get out of my situation? Okay. And sometimes, don't get me wrong, I worked in corporate for, 15 years, and the environment can be very, very, very complex. Lots of moving parts. I get that. I totally get it. Okay. But as human beings, we have to stop, identify who's talking to me in my head. Okay. Is it Dave or is it Mark? Okay. And you have to then think logically to make those decisions to get you out of the situation that you're in. Otherwise, you can become an emotional mess if you let your chimp run riot. Because believe it or not, and you'll hear this in the book, your chimp, or everybody's chimp, through Professor Steve Peters' research, is 5 times stronger than the human. The chimp will always act first.
Yeah.
Okay. Something happens, you react. Road rage, some idiot doing something, and you're like, that's not the kind, gentle Sandy. That's the inner primate that reacts emotionally. Why? Because it was there to keep you safe.
So it's about creating a habit out of kind of system 2 thinking, or creating a habit of logic, as opposed to creating a habit of response.
100%. And every time somebody says to me now, if I go out with friends, would you like a glass of wine? And I just say, no, thank you.
Yeah.
Why? Because I don't allow Dave to answer for me.
Nice.
I just react. Just say, no, thank you. Are you sure? Yeah, I'm sure. Thank you. Because I'm in control. I'm the living, breathing human that's in control, not Dave. Okay. Even though Dave was in my head, in fact, he was born before I was born, if you read the science, but I'm in control. This is my life. I'm the pilot. I'm the captain. Dave's just he's he's just somebody on the journey with me, just a passenger. But
Nice.
but please, I mean this. Read the book or listen to the audio. It'll change your life forever.
Thank you.
That's
or
okay.
Get some coaching get some coaching with the real David Labouchere, and he'll be he can be the chimp in your ear.
Yes, very much so. So yeah. So what kind of questions do you have then, everybody? This is maybe a chance. You may not get this chance very often. Whether it's the inclusion, diversity, disability, Olympic, thoughts and feelings that's going on in your head. What are you struggling to achieve right now? What are you struggling to achieve right now? Because I'm happy to help.
Yeah, I think
if you don't need help, then I commend you. But remember the poem. Remember the man in the glass. Are you being honest with yourself? Because I know if I was on a call with an Olympic champion, I'd be asking as many questions as I could, because I want to give 100% and continue to give 100%. But if you're happy with where you are, then good for you.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. If there are any other questions, now's your chance. And I think probably one more from me, only because it crops up so much with the clients that I work with. And you've talked about it a little bit before, but I think consistency is just such a powerful piece. There's no doubt people are going to come off the call and feel inspired and excited. And then it connects a little bit with what Rachel said, but any last minute nuggets around consistency?
Yeah, I think the important thing for me, and I've said this hundreds of times on stage, my job as an international speaker is not to inspire you. Okay, that's not my job. My job, my responsibility is to teach you how to inspire yourself. Okay, how do I teach you how to inspire yourself? Which comes back to knowing your why. Who are those people around you that you want them to feel proud of your achievements? You know, and being honest with yourself, being accountable to yourself, you know, is so important, because in today's society, and take this how you want to take it, is so easy to hide, lie, and fake your way through life. But in sport, and David knows this, David Leboucher knows this, in professional sport, there's nowhere to hide. This is why I am as authentic and as transparent as I am, because I can be, you know, because I want to be. You know, it's so important. It really is to be your authentic self. So yeah, if you can find that inner passion, drive, and determination to inspire yourself, then you have to accept the outcome. You have to, because so many people don't evaluate the outcome on their journey day by day or week by week, which goes back to what you said about, you know, accountability and consistency. Okay, because if I asked every single person on this call, hand on heart, in a private conversation, are you happy with where you are right now? Don't take my word for it, but answer your own question. You know, are you really 100% happy with where you are right now? Imagine being on that journey to train for an Olympic Games, and you look at the planner and you're like, I'm down on my power. I'm 2 kilos heavier than what I should be, and I'm only getting 4 hours sleep, not 9 hours sleep. How would that make you feel? You'd probably go through the pillars of change, of apprehension, fear, doubt, and uncertainty. So it's how we manage ourselves on that journey of being consistent, you know, every week. Because remember, you know, the clock of life just ticks away below us, you know, and before you know it, you come to the end, you know, which was my dad's message of making sure that you create your own legacy, you know, and certainly turning your goals into a legacy to help other people, you know, to help other people. So, but yeah, great question, Peter, actually.
And this question really resonates. So Sandy, I think this was one of yours. Nature, nurture, discipline. Have you always been a disciplined person?
I have actually. Yeah.
Developed it.
No, I went off the rails for about 1.5 years. But I learned from it, you know. Yeah, as an only child, you know, didn't have any brothers or sisters, and yeah, I was always guided by my parents, you know, because they had great values and they shared those values with me, you know. And before my accident, you know, I just lived a normal life, you know, working for a PLC company, always had that driven mindset, working hard, smashing targets, you know, and I loved it. I loved it because I was getting that dopamine hit, you know, literally every day. And then obviously after the accident and the journey to London 2012, that's when I really, really found myself, my true self. You know, I closed the shutters on the Mark Colbourne before the accident and opened the shutters on Mark Colbourne, you know, after the accident, to be that authentic, kind, genuine, generous person, you know, to genuinely care. And I've said this before, I don't care what people think about me. I really don't, because I know I care about people. Okay. Yes, I walk like Charlie Chaplin, but I'm okay with that. You know. And now my goal, my vision, back to your question earlier on, is to help other people. If they want their help, if they're open to be helped and coached, then I'm more than happy to help, you know.
And
so,
Mark, just last minute, some people are dropping, so we're getting close to time, but just a really quick one. What's your next Paralympics in inverted commas? What's the next one for you?
Yeah, I think the goal for me, as I said, my legacy vision is to help 1 million people to look good, feel great, and be happy, you know. And we're probably 25%, you know, through the numbers right now. If you include, you know, the conferences, the events, the gatherings, yeah, it's a great feeling knowing that I'm creating a lasting change, you know, because I suppose the important thing to remember here, Peter, is, you know, perception is not reality. You know, my eyes are going to close for good one day, you know, but I'm going to do my absolute best between now and that time, you know. So yeah, it's a big challenge, you know, certainly here in the Middle East. It's a wonderful environment. Feels like Wales today with the rain. But that's okay. We accept change and we move on. You know, we move on. So, but yeah, I just wanted to say thank you to Peter and Davika, and thank you to all the audience. David Labouchier, it's lovely to meet you. You know, and hopefully we'll grab a coffee soon. That would be wonderful. But yeah, once again, thank you very much, Peter. Thank you to Be Limitless to give me this opportunity, you know, to share my feelings and my thoughts and key messages on, you know, how to win with mindset.
Yeah. Thank you very much, mate. Amazing stuff.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thanks to the community for dialing in. Just love that you do this, everybody. I know there's a million other things you could have done today, and we just love the fact that you've come to connect. It is throwing it down outside my window right now. All right, Mark, you have taken us right into the Welsh Valleys with this talk.
Don't blame me for the rain.
Presentation. So
don't blame me.
Team, love you so much. Angie, accredited performance coach, you got another 4 hours with us. We're kicking off in 30 minutes, so go and have a rest. That's our certified coach training program, which quite a few people on this program have done as well. Almost everybody. Can't wait to dive into that. Team, we're going to love you and leave you. Thank you very much indeed. Davika, thanks for bringing everybody together. Miss you. Have a great weekend.